to computer. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to lesson 10. We have 2 more weeks left. Yay. I sent out a handout. We're going to be following it basically. It says now concerning spirituals. And then the other handouts, there's one on spiritual gifts. And I think and then there's some definitions if you want to go over. We had definitions of tongues and prophecy. And this is when I really did real lengthy ones. Let's see here. Yeah, there's different words for prophecy and stuff. So anyway, if you'll get those out, we're going to be fill in the blank sort of thing. I don't normally like these, but this one is really good. I didn't do this. I copied it from somebody. Okay. I'm just saying, okay, I did. And you can't get these anymore. So let's start off with, let's find a prayer. Where's my book? Let's find out. Let's do some cheating here. When is today? June the 6th. Golly. This year. Can you believe it's already June? Like
this. Is today D-Day? Yeah.
D-Day? Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it?
It is.
There's Ola. My helper is not here today. That's why. My prayer for today. Lord, I ask you to please help me become an honorable representation of who you are. I'm sorry for allowing myself in the past to live a low standard that gives the wrong impression about you. Now I understand that I am your face and your voice to the people around me. To the best of my ability, I want to speak courteously, dress appropriately, act professionally, and live in a Christ-like manner so I can accurately portray your word and your heart. I know this is going to require some changes in my life, so today I'm asking you to help me as I take steps towards becoming a worthy representative. Thank you. Who brings only honor to the King of Kings. I pray this in Jesus' name. That really speaks to what we've been studying, doesn't it?
Yes.
We got a bunch of iPhones coming on. Connie, are you 2 different phones? Oh no, that's Barbara. Somebody has echo going on.
There we go.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. For those who just popped in, we're gonna start with now concerning spirituals handout that I sent you. I hope that you guys do print these out. It has a lot of valuable information on them. Oh, that baby's getting big, isn't he? Or is she? She? Okay. No wonder she has so much hair. Yeah. Okay. Didn't you? I like this handout. I don't know. Did anybody do work on the handout before class?
No, I wanted to and I forgot. I just looked at it.
Okay. Well, did you? Good. See, I knew there's always got to be one smart aleck in there. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is if you do this, we'll kind of go over it. Well, we will go over it, but it really is useful, isn't it, Cheryl?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like wherever you find these because I think you did one before. They're pretty good.
Yeah, this is from Precepts from Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think they're up and going anymore. Oh, and everybody has heard that Kay passed away, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so varieties of I'll start giving these and then we'll talk about them, okay? Varieties of gifts come from the same Spirit. Ministries come from the Lord. And effects or activities, we use the same God. So you have the Spirit, the Lord, and God. And the different things that we can get is gifts, ministry, and activities. And what do you think the common purpose is?
Build the church.
For the church. Now, I actually have written down for the common good.
Oh, that's what I have for the common good.
For the
'cause that's
common
what it
good.
says.
Yeah. So what did you learn in talking about this? This is chapter 12. He says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware. So is everybody well aware of the spiritual gifts?
Yes.
Yeah, but haven't they got twisted a lot sometimes too?
Mhm.
What are some different ways that you've seen it get twisted? Okay, let's say the biggest one that's always controversial.
The tongues.
The tongues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question on tongues generally is what? There's two different kinds of tongues. Is that correct? Or
Yes, that's generally the thought process.
yeah. Like Paul talks about speaking the spiritual tongue of angels. Okay. But there's also speaking of tongues, for instance, like the day of Pentecost. What kind of tongues were they speaking, and why was it such a big deal?
Tons of men, and they didn't know them.
Yeah, they speaking in languages that they didn't even know. But how did they know they were speaking real languages?
Other people understood them.
Yeah.
Many people there for the Passover, yeah.
Yeah, because at the Passover, and what they say is that people from all nations will come to Jerusalem for Passover. It would influx from like 100,000 people to 2 million people during this time. Yeah, so there was quite an influx, And can you think, I mean, when we were studying this stuff, can you imagine how many animals were sacrificed? Yeah, it's just, a lot of blood, right?
Constantly, day and night.
Yeah, yeah. So if you go into verse 11, what I like about this handout, excuse me, is that it has one verse you can go to find that out, So it helps you not get so lost. I get lost easy. Does anybody else?
Oh yeah.
But the Spirit distributes as one. He wills, yeah. So it's him who distributes them. Can you decide what gift you're going to get?
No.
No.
Yeah. When he had me come to start leading a class, it was a complete shock to me. Hey, I'm not the normal teacher, B, I'm nerdy, We were talking to Ben's daughter the other day, who lives in Seattle. Where's Connie? There she is. And and I said, yeah, we're just a bunch of nerds here. And she goes, you're not nerdy. And I go, yeah, we are. We are. Ben and I are really nerdy, aren't we, Barbara? Barbara's nerdy. Kathy's nerdy.
What can
Yeah,
I
I
do?
think everybody here is kind of nerdy, right? We like to dig into the details, but that takes a special person. I mean, yeah, we're just special, aren't we? We like to dig in and try to really understand it. Now, Billy has tried to teach me how to speak Hebrew or sing Hebrew. Still haven't done it yet. But I do love, Barbara and I talk about different Hebrew words or Greek words all the time, and well, most of you and all, but Barbara's really nerdy. If you really want somebody who can really dig on that, that's the lady to talk to.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, you got to know who to go to for different things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then he places members. Now, I found this one fascinating. Verse 18 of chapter 12. But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as he desired.
Yes.
What does that say to you?
God has control.
Um,
He puts you where he wants you, doesn't he?
Yeah.
but
Well,
and he puts desires in us
Yes.
that we choose what he wants us to do if we're surrendered to him.
Yeah, according to his desires.
Yeah.
Mhm.
well, he's the one that knit us together in mother's womb. So I'm surprised. The older I get, the more I understand what where he put me throughout my life to train me up in a particular gift.
It's amazing, isn't it? How many
Yeah.
people I sent out now this was the real I have a better one, but I just couldn't find it. A little self-test on the gifts, what kind of gifts you have. How many of you did that or have done one like
I
that?
did.
I
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Did you find that interesting? Was anything surprising to you?
Well, I've taken it before and it just confirmed what I already knew. So that's cool.
So what are you, Connie?
The gift of helps and the gift of teaching.
All right. Yeah, I'm not good at hospitality. I go to Kathy's house for that.
Me too.
I'm just saying.
Denise, my number one was hospitality, and I didn't find it on the next page of the handouts. I didn't find it listed anywhere. I mean, I know it's listed in Hebrews.
Yeah, it's in Hebrews.
But it wasn't on the list of the gifts of the Spirit in
I
Romans.
I think it's in helping.
Oh, okay. So it's all
Don't you think? Don't y'all think that hospitality is in helping? Yeah. Those people would like to help people by opening up their homes. I know people that open up their homes to anybody. Oh, come stay with me for a month. That's okay.
Yeah.
Evelyn's like that, okay? Every time I call her, I go, well, who's staying with you this week? Seriously, it's like I don't get to see her much anymore because she's having all these people over, and it's like, well, don't forget your little puny friends here in town, but yeah. So he places us where he desires, because I always wondered, why did you move me around so much? I have been in Jackson, Tennessee longer than any other town in my life, and I've been here for 25 years. Yeah.
But we learn things from every place we are, and every church we've been in, and every group we've been in. We learn things that he uses.
Yeah. Because I can go back, and I think we talked about this too. You look back in your history and you go, why did I have such a messed up life? Well, I learned a lot of things from that to be able to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people say, oh, you don't know what I'm talking about. Go, yeah, I do. Been there, done that. It sucks, I know, but let me show you a path that helped me out,
We show you a better way.
and show you, a better way, because whoo, doggies. So, warning. What's the warning in verse 25?
No division in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love so that there's no division in the body. I found out the other day that a guy, Ben told me sometimes he wears a t-shirt that says inclusion. I go, what does that mean? And he goes, well, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but they wanted to have a prayer and to sign a letter to go to the congressman about Gaza and how mistreated the people in Gaza are. And I'm going, I know, but Kathy, that's when I thought, I just kind of cringed at that. And I go, yes, terrible things are happening to people in Gaza.
Same with
It
the
is.
United States. Terrible things happen here too.
Hello. Hello.
Sorry. Let's
You
solve
know,
our
but
problems here.
it's like my husband's first response was, well, they're in a war zone.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in war, you're in war. We don't know. We are so separate, aren't we, Ola? Come on, pipe in here. She's in London. You know, London gets a lot more of it than we do.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in London, I don't know how many, you know, there was a car that crashed into the, oh, I'm going to butcher this, Westminster.
Abby.
Yeah. So it was shut down, so nobody could go see it because a car ran into it. Well, we don't have that happen all that much here, but it goes on quite a bit over in Europe, doesn't it? Oh, she left. No, I thought a little. I don't mean to scare you off, Ola. Okay. But then God appoints in the church. Now, okay, so there's three things that he appoints in the church. One of those three member types:
Apostles.
apostles,
Prophets.
prophets,
Teachers.
and
Teachers.
teachers. Yeah, and see, there's so, and then what sort of things do people do in the church also? This is all in verse 28, I believe.
Miracles.
Miracles,
Healings.
healings, gifts of healings, helping,
Helps. Administrations.
administration. Well, I'm
Yeah.
talking really good today.
And tongues.
And then tongues, yeah. So I like the little picture there, you know, picture the heart, the ear, the sight, the feet, you know, and everywhere that Paul, you know, Paul and Jesus too, you know, they talked about, you know, the different members of the body that work together. I mean, the analogy that Paul uses is really fabulous. You know, the ear doesn't tell the feet what to do, right? But the feet take you where the brain, you know, I mean, it's just, it all has to work together, right? And once he's saying then about the church.
We should all work together.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
ask really hard questions here, don't I?
Yeah, the
verse
power of the
26,
church,
go ahead.
the power of the church is in the unity of the church.
And verse 26 tells us that if one member is honored, we are all to rejoice with him. And the human tendency is to get jealous or, you know, something like that. But Paul's got it straight there.
And I liked what it said in the scripture about, you know, the person that is on the lower to bring them up. I thought that was, I love that.
To encourage them, right?
Yeah, to bring them up because that should be our goal.
Yeah. I'm doing a project on the development of a baby in the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that it's been pushed into my face over and over is that God creates and everything works together. And when you have in the body, if everything's working together, we call that healthy.
Mhm.
And when some part of the body, whether it's the church or the human body, when it goes out of that order, then we get sickness, disease, illness, dissension. And so whenever there's dissension in a church, then it gets sick,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not healthy.
just like our bodies.
Mhm.
Barbara, what were you going to say? Or do you remember?
No, I was done.
There's a show that was on, I think, CBS or NBC, one of those. Tom Hanks narrated it. It was on Nature. If you ever get to see it, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. You saw it, Nancy? I mean, we just watched it in awe of how they got pictures and how they studied different parts of creation, you know, in the Americas. So you had
Yeah.
South
What
America and North America.
one of the things that I read about is that one of those really big trees out in California, the sequoias,
Uh-huh.
the only reason that they stay standing up is their root system.
Mm-hmm.
And their root system is like for miles. And so when there's wind or something, those trees stand up. That's the working together, how God created stuff to support each other. Even the
Yeah.
trees' roots do it.
Yeah. I mean, how the whole world works together,
Yeah.
I think we looked at that a lot in when we studied Genesis on the creation of the world. And it was
Yeah.
fascinating, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
everything is built together to
Yeah.
create the atmosphere for mankind to live.
I just recently, my granddaughter sent me a picture of my upcoming grandson that's coming, and I couldn't believe it. Look at this, ladies.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
see it?
We're off a little bit. Go the other
Okay,
way.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
There we
Get a little
go.
bit more, a little bit
I got
more.
it tilted.
There we go.
There we
Oh,
go.
look at
Oh,
that,
wow,
little
accurate.
cutie.
Oh,
He's still
wow.
in the womb. He's still
That's
in
in
the
the
womb.
womb?
Yes, in
Wow.
the womb.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah,
My daughter had
unbelievable.
one of those too. They are,
Yeah,
and her son looked just like the picture when he
yeah,
came out. It was shocking.
really.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Mm.
When I was pregnant the first time, I was in the hospital and they did a sonogram, but it was a different kind of sonogram. It was black and white. It was not color,
Mm-hmm.
but I could see his face that clear. And I was
Really.
4.5 months pregnant. And
Oh, my.
when he was born, I recognized him. It
Mm.
wasn't that good, but the other ones are just a little, thing that's just flopping around
I
or
was
whatever,
lucky to tell
Yeah.
it was a human being
Yeah.
when I had
That's
my first.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's, you talk about healing. Healing is not just a magical healing. It's going to the doctor and the
yeah.
doctor's
Yeah.
practicing medicine. I loved
I
it
just
when,
love it. I just love it when the medical people look at you and go, huh? I mean, this shoulder has been amazing. My therapist from day one, that I could actually move it. And he said, at first therapy, I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing at the end.
yeah, that's
And
Yeah.
it's
amazing.
not me. I keep saying it's not me. I ask God to guide the surgeon's thoughts and hands. And sometimes God chooses to do that.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Okay, so not everyone speaks with, does everybody speak with tongues?
No.
No.
Now, I remember a friend of mine, her family really believed it and stuff. And so they prayed over me that I would receive the gift of tongues. I still don't speak in tongues, you know, except I can't speak English, but we all know that. That's not the same thing, right? Okay. So, we just don't always have it. I've heard of people, this one guy was telling me at a conference I went to, it was prophecy conference. And he said that he knew a guy that every time he flew into a country, he could speak that language just miraculously. I go, oh, come on. And he goes, seriously, he goes, I heard him. He goes, it was the weirdest thing you ever saw in your life. And he just knew, he just said, well, that's my gift. And I'm going, and then when he left the country, he didn't speak it anymore. I mean, it's
Wow.
do, 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 right?
But it's a God thing.
It's a God
Yeah.
thing.
God thing.
And you just sit there and like Barbara and I've been through so many surgeries, and it's like it's a miracle we're still, vertical. That right now I don't
Yeah.
feel very good. Okay, so in verse 31, we should desire
Earnestly.
Earnestly.
earnestly. Yeah. Yeah. So we should earnestly. But I think we're just all built for certain things. I know what I was going to say earlier. I think it's miraculous how there's no two things, living, animate, or look at that puppy dog. Look at the baby. Sorry. Uh, everything is different. Even identical twins are different.
Mhm.
I had a friend yesterday saying it's amazing that her and her husband had 7 children, and there's not a two of them that are alike, you know?
And you know, the moment they're born, they're different, don't you?
Even before.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, there's no two pregnancies that are the same.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
So if we go on to chapter 13, what is chapter 13 called?
The love chapter.
Love chapter.
The love chapter. See here, I have, see here, I can't read my own writing. Spiritual gifts are instruments of loving. Nothing has value without love. I thought that was an important. What kind of, at a glance, did you come up with that one? Was that kind of what you had?
I had abiding in faith, hope, and love.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
I had the most excellent way.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. So gifts without love are nothing. And then we went into what love is. What does Paul describe? How does Paul describe love in verse 4?
Patient,
Patient.
kind, not jealous,
Mm-hmm.
does not brag, is not arrogant,
Does not act.
unbecomingly,
Yep.
does not seek its own,
Yeah.
is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered,
Mm.
does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
Well, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think the interesting thing about these things is you look at them, love is patient. Okay, love is patient. Well, in my NASB, it's got other verses that are related to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at them up, and it was really helpful because love is patient, but love covers all transgressions, it says in Proverbs, you know. And if you go through and look those up, it's really convicting, I think, more so than just reading the one-word descriptions.
Yeah, that's where I say, the concordance cross-referencing comes in
Mhm.
to really add value to the scripture.
Yeah.
When I was first learning the Bible and stuff, and after I started praying before I studied because I found out that helps. But it was amazing to me how every book, and we talk about this all the time, how it's all interconnected,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't care how smart you are, you couldn't have 60 some authors over how many thousands of years, and they all somehow connect. It's amazing.
Yeah,
And
that to me that proves its holiness
mhm.
and how God is in it. Because
Yeah.
man can't do that.
No, man can't do that. I don't care how brilliant you are. Because you try to read Plato, he was all over the place. But that's just my opinion too. Okay, then we get to verse 8. Did you all look at that very much? Prophecy will be done away. Tongues will cease. Now, what on earth is he talking about?
Well, I went down that rabbit trail. And there was a lot of that in the commentaries about that one,
Mm-hmm.
because some of them believe that it was, I don't know, that there was just about the tongue ceasing and why they would cease. So there was just a lot of different thoughts on that.
And when they would cease, because that's
Yes,
not
and when they
clarified.
were, it's a
Yeah.
timeline thing,
Yeah.
future now, what, you know.
But and what is the instigator in these things ceasing?
The return of Christ, his second
Yeah.
coming.
Exactly.
When the
Yeah.
Christ comes, the imperfect will pass away. We won't
Yeah.
have
Some of the commentaries said it wasn't the return of Christ. It was just the finishing of the New Testament. I mean, there was,
Wow.
and I was
I don't think
I
so.
thought that was really interesting,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's why you have to be careful reading different commentaries too.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, and where your own discernment comes in. You know, and I always say, God, this sounds kind of fishy, and He goes, well, if it stinks, it probably is. Yeah, that's how He talks to me. I don't know how He talks to you, but that's how He talks to me. You know, but that's part of discernment. You know, if something, you know, when you hear something, you go, oh, I just don't know about that. You know, it sounds good on paper or looks good on paper, but it's just something about it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get a stop inside.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. You
and
know,
usually the first intuition is right, and then you go and question, well, maybe not, and
Yeah.
then you come back to what you first thought in the beginning because God gave it to you.
And on the other,
yeah,
Yeah.
we can't put God in a box because
No.
he will break out and he'll come to us in a way that we didn't expect. Just
boy,
like
that's a
Ruth,
truth.
you're saying, you're teaching. That was totally out of the box for you, but God did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no clue. You know,
Me either.
especially the Bible.
Wait, I didn't want
You
to be a
know.
teacher, period. God must have chuckled.
He has a sense of humor,
Does
okay?
he ever?
But we will see Christ face to face when this is all knowledge will be done away with. I just because right now he says we know in part.
Right.
And he uses that idea of mirror. What did you find out about the mirror? Cheryl, did you read the
Yeah.
commentaries? What did you find out about mirrors in the ancient days?
Well, that we just don't see. Well, in the ancient days, they were bronze, and you couldn't really see, out
Hmm.
at the mirror. So they were describing that we only partially see right now what's going on. We don't see what's ahead of us, you know, in the next life to come.
Mhm.
So, and what's going to
Yeah.
happen? Christ returns.
Yeah. We can't see what's going on now. No.
Yeah, exactly.
But the more we study, the more clearly we do see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the wisdom thing too,
Mm.
which I'm sure clown about that. But we will know in part. Now we prophesy in part. When the perfect comes, that's when we meet at complete
Yes.
maturity. The partial will be done away with.
Yeah, that was the one that I looked up, the perfect. So instantly at first, when I read that in scripture, what God told me, I said, this was Jesus returns. But then I went to the commissaries at the end of our lesson, and then, oh gosh, there was so much controversy on that right there. So that was one.
There's a lot of controversy in that.
Mhm.
Yes.
I have on verse 12. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully as I am fully known. My little note says, keep your eyes on the goal and not on the means towards achieving it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, Christina.
Uh, 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 uh,
I
I'm
made
trying
it.
to get to. I'm trying to get to it. Yeah, I made it. Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good morning.
morning. Now abide in faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these are love, is love.
Love.
Faith vanishes to sight, Jeremiah 16:14. Hope equals reality, Job 19:20. Did you learn anything else about chapter 13 that was interesting? Trying to see if anything. There's nothing else on that. Another thing he said about tongues was it really wasn't much good unless you had an interpreter of tongues.
I used to go to my first church here was one that speaks in tongues. I forget the denomination, but we were doing a lot of leadership during the time, and you had to sign this waiver that you accepted, that you believed, that you spoke, that you had to speak in tongues, and we refused to sign it. So we ended up leaving the church over it
Yeah,
because
because some churches believe you aren't really saved unless you speak in tongues.
I know. And I said, we don't speak it. And he said, well, it has to be indwelled in you. And we just didn't get it. We were just a Pentecostal church. That's the
Yeah.
word. And so he just said, no, I don't
My
think so.
husband grew up with that. Now, he does not speak in tongues.
But that's another box that we try to put God in.
Yeah.
It tells us right here that not all speak in tongues, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I used to have a friend that took me to this church in Nashville area, Franklin, and they had a prophecy area. Okay. And they taught people how to prophesy. And I felt uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so I decided to study it. And this is where you learn, and you can read in my notes about prophecy. And I didn't put my opinion in this or anything, but prophesying is not, oh, well, you're this kind of person and this is going to happen to you and that. That's not prophecy.
Foretelling, and
that's fortune telling, right?
Sometimes God gives a person foretelling, but usually it's forthtelling.
Let's see what this says. A discourse emanating from the divine inspiration and declaring the purposes of God, whether by reproving and admonishing the wicked or comforting the afflicted, or revealing things hidden, especially by foretelling future events.
Well, the thing is in chapter 12, the verse that we went over in 28, it's specific that God appoints him in the church. So if you think if he appoints them in the church, he must appoint them. So they're appointed. That's who God wants. He picks them.
You don't go to a place and get trained for
learn.
it.
Yeah.
You don't go to class and learn how to do prophecy.
That's and that's why I felt uncomfortable with it, and that when they would sit there and tell you what your personality was, and they were not right with me anyway. So I just kind of it signifies the speaking forth of the mind and counsel of God.
Okay. I lost you.
This is in my definitions of prophecy.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And these are straight out of Strong's or Vine's. Okay. So those are pretty solid interpretations. Okay. It's then you get into our apostles valid anymore. I mean, you can get into so many different things. I don't know if the apostles are still around or not, and I don't particularly care. There are people of God and there are people that are not of God. That's kind of how I look at it. Some people have the knack or the gift of starting up new churches, don't they?
Yes.
I don't, but I go to a church that does it, So when they want something I can do to help, I help. You're crooked, Barbara.
I know it. I had one of my grown sons call me to steal alcohol, and I need to. Anyway, cut me off my phone.
Okay. So when we go to chapter 14, what did you find out in chapter 14? Here we go with speaking in tongues again, don't we?
And prophecy.
and prophecy. Yeah.
important. It comes first.
Yeah, he says that's one that's really special to him, isn't it?
Mhm.
But in his spirit he speaks mysteries. But one who prophesies speaks to men for edification and exhortation and consolation. One who speaks in tongue edifies himself, but one who prophesies edifies the church. It has to be building up the church, does it not?
Yes.
Mhm.
So prophecy speaks to men who edify and edifies the church. Verse 22, tongues is assigned to unbelievers, where prophecy is assigned to believers. And that, speaking of tongues, is in different languages. Okay. When you assemble, let all these things be done for edification. Did anybody look up edification and what it means?
Strengthening.
Strengthening, yeah.
Building up.
Building up, yeah. So, psalm, teaching, revelation, tongue, interpretation. So, anyone who speaks in tongues, what does he say that it has to have?
Interpretation.
Interpretation. So, if you're speaking, like if you go to a Pentecostal church and everybody's going, you know, and I remember going to it gave me the creeps. That's just me personally, okay? I'm not saying that speaking in tongues is bad or anything like that, but when you're making, as Paul says, the clang, you know, clanging the cymbals, you know, you're just making noise. That's not any good. And if you do it in front of people that don't know what you're doing, they're going to think you're nutty or fruitcake.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. You know, I can barely speak English, so I can't speak other languages. I don't have that gift. I don't speak in the angelic tongue. You know, um, a lot of people believe in it and they like it. You know, I don't know. It's just, does anybody know
Well,
or
that church
experience?
I went to, they had they had somebody interpret. What would happen is somebody would say something and then they'd have somebody all of a sudden there'd be a pause and then somebody would say something to explain it. And they'd be real loud in the congregation. At first, when I first went there, it was shocking because I wasn't sure what it was. And then somebody said, "Oh, it's tongues, like something very special had happened." So that's kind of what I witnessed.
The church I went to, there was like a couple hundred people yelling and screaming. Seriously.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All at one time. And you did it for 10 or 15 minutes, and then the preacher would stop it and
Yeah.
they'd go on with the, yeah, it was bizarre.
Yeah. Mm. This
Well,
was at a time.
But it says that 2 or 3 at most, and one must interpret.
Yeah.
Okay, then it talks about women and them making noise in the church. What
what,
did you think
wait,
of that?
hang on. What goes
Okay.
with this under the guidelines? It says blank speak and blank speak.
Anyone can speak in tongues, prophets speak, and others must pass judgment. That's what I have written down.
I wrote a number, 2 or 3. 2 or 3
Yeah, I had 2 or 3 must.
and
Yeah.
2 or 3 can interpret. So that's what I got out of the scripture.
Okay. I think that's one that's kind of
Yeah.
all over the place, isn't it?
Like, because I looked at the verse and I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these were guidelines. Let's see here. 14.
It says it's in verse 26, and I was just puzzled.
What is the outcome then, brethren, when you assemble? Each one has a psalm, has a teaching, or has a revelation, has a tongue, has an interpretation. Let all these things be done for edification. If anyone speaks in a tongue, it should be by 2 or 3 at the most, and each of them in turn. And that's what Cheryl was talking about. When you speak in tongues, they do it in turn. And there must be one who can interpret it.
Yeah, that's what I witnessed too. That
Yeah.
there was always
Not
an
when I witnessed.
yeah.
I just heard a bunch of gibberish all over the place, and they were loud. They were
Oh.
loud, screaming. But if there is no interpreter, he must keep silent in the church and let him speak to himself and to God.
Yeah. That's
So
what
that's like keeping yourself. Now, you know when I do know how can do, I can groan real well.
a lot of people call that when not in the church speaking to God, they call that a prayer language.
Yeah.
That they do speak in tongues, but it's between them and God.
Yeah. And what he's saying is that you keep that between you and God. You don't, and that's what like the church I went to kind of bent it. You know.
That kind of reminded me of Hannah when you said that. You know, when she said her prayer, they thought she was drunk. You know, maybe that was her prayer language.
Yeah.
Again, her lips are
and Paul, I don't know where he says it. If anybody can remember, Paul says that it's speaking in the tongue of angels.
Men and of angels.
I don't know.
So I have a question. When they speak in tongues or interpret in tongues, after it's done, do they remember what they say?
I never talked with the people afterwards because I didn't know them. So I don't know, you know.
I think some do and some don't. And it probably depends. Again, we can't put God in a box.
Yeah,
No,
it'll be like somebody will say that I said something to them, you know, that really changed their lives or, you know, helped them. I have no clue when I said I don't remember saying it. Have anybody had that happen to them? That happens to me a lot. You know, I'll go, I don't even remember talking to you about that.
Yeah.
So is it like that when people speak in tongues?
I think for some, and I think some, you know,
it can be.
like Jeremiah knew what he said because he wrote it down. And he was a prophet. And Isaiah, but you know, they did weird things too, like walk around naked for 3 years, you know.
God told him to. Can you imagine?
No, I mean, God told him to do it, so he did it, you know. But
Well,
what did you get out, huh?
I just wanted to say about tongues, my church practices it. For the weird church, I guess.
You're in one of those weird churches, okay.
And I received the gift of tongues in a really desperate time of my life where I didn't have any other words to pray.
Yes.
And it just came out. I didn't ask for it. I thought that it was a bunch of hooey until it happened to me.
But that's a prayer that you do with God. That's between you and God, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I think that's my groaning.
Yeah, maybe. Sometimes at church, though, they said everybody sing in tongues. I'm like, I don't agree with that, but yeah, I get it. I just wanted to say that I experience it. I grew up in a very conservative church, so it was like I wasn't asking for it. It just happened.
That's legitimate. You
I
received
don't have
that
I
gift.
don't have a problem with that, you know.
No.
But for people to
exploit it.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
That's with anything though.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And exploiting it, it's discredited.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Just like symbols. Clashing a bunch of symbols together.
Yeah. It's a bunch of noise. But it is valid, Connie. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I just find that my prayer language like that just really helps me when I don't know what's going on or don't know how to pray for other people in their situations. I can just pray in my prayer language and then just have such a peace. Like I know God heard me, I know it's dealt with. And then later on, I get an understanding or a leading or an impression.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There was one time when I was praying in tongues under my breath at church, and I just started hearing what I was saying
Mhm.
in English.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
oh, it wasn't anything grand, like anything grand. It was just, please protect my family, all that stuff that you would say in English anyway. So,
I think mine's just in groaning, because I know what it's like when you're praying so hard, there's just no words for it,
Mhm.
mhm.
and I think all of us have experienced that, you know. So I don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with exploiting it and not being able to interpret it, and that's where they talk about prophets. There's kind of it gets kind of dicey there. Are you speaking in tongues or are you being a prophet? You know,
Mhm.
I think that's what Paul's saying here. What do you think? It's better if you prophesy. You did get that, right?
Well, it's so everyone can understand.
Yeah, yeah. So what about women keeping their traps shut in church? What was that all about?
Well, when I looked that up in the commentaries, it suggested that if if a woman's husband had prophesied in church, she wasn't supposed to start asking him questions in church about what it meant.
Yeah, to do that at home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also read that there's a lot of problem with them just chattering and well, why
Yes,
are they
that's what I
doing that?
read.
Yeah, that they were just chattering because the women were separated from the men, you
Right.
know.
And they'd have to almost yell across the room to ask a question. And
Yeah,
that's not appropriate in that particular setting.
yeah. It's just a matter of what's appropriate and what's not. And then we got into the long hair, the covering of hair. Um, that's really pretty much a time thing, one is socially acceptable and stuff. But in verse 40 it says, let all things be done properly in an orderly manner. I
Yes.
felt so good when I learned that God is an orderly God.
Oh, absolutely.
Today, so is when
I lived in chaos most of my life.
Look at
I
the
did.
world around you. It was done
Yeah.
in order. And, God did that. When I teach math, I teach my kids there's order in math because God placed it there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at creation, the way that the sun comes up, the way it sets. It's just everything in order. It just amazes me.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
And how it all works together.
Yeah. Somebody always told me, God, good, orderly direction.
There you go.
Oh, that's good.
Isn't that good? I like
Yeah, I've
that.
heard that. Yeah. But it is interesting. Abigail, do you have a cold? I'm so sorry. Those are miserable. Okay, so 14, the women are to keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but are to subject themselves, just as the law also says. If they desire to learn anything, let them ask their own husbands at home, for it is improper for a woman to speak in church. That was just talking about the society at that time. It was improper for women to speak in public.
Mhm.
It's just the way it was, you know. It's more of a cultural thing. If anyone thinks he is a prophet or spiritual, let him recognize that the things which I write to you are the Lord's commandment. But if anyone does not recognize this, he is not recognized. Okie dokie. He's pretty to the point, isn't he? Therefore, my brethren, desire earnestly to prophesy and do not forbid to speak in tongues, but all things must be done properly and in an orderly manner. I like that. I like order. I like to know where my Windex is. Y'all heard my Windex story before.
I did not.
Oh, my husband stole my Windex and he left it in the shop. And he goes, well, I can go get it. And I go, I just spent an hour looking for it. You have wasted an hour of my life. He goes, so he said, well, go buy your own bottle. And I go, that is my bottle. You go buy your bottle.
Yes.
I have to put things back where they belong.
All my tools
Okay.
that I have that are my tools.
Yes. Don't mess with my screwdrivers.
Where people go to get the tools because they know where mine are.
Because you keep them orderly, right?
Both of my levels disappeared out of my closet. I was like, where are my levels?
My level disappeared. I went to look for my level about 3 weeks ago, and I go, where is my level?
My husband said, it's down in this shop. I went, well, I can find nothing in that shop of y'all's.
Oh, no.
You go
It's a
find-
mess, isn't it? No order to it at all. No.
Well, they think it is, but it's not to
They
me.
know where everything is, you know.
Not to me.
Kathy and I, we just complain, don't we? I want my Windex and she wants her level.
I don't
The
like
end of conversation.
Do y'all remember when they used to make those little boxes for women's tools and you open it up and each tool? I had 2 of those and only about 3 things are left in either one of them.
I understand that statement. I got to show you one I've been working on.
Oh, that's the altar.
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful.
Oh,
That is awesome.
Now I got to figure out how to sew it all together.
Oh, Denise,
Wow.
you're amazing.
oh,
That is stunning.
Just the design work is so tough on this stuff, isn't it, Kathy?
Yes, absolutely.
And I've been trying to work on my red frontal, and this one, my priest's wife came over and helped me design that. But I think I'm gonna have to come over to Kathy's house and have her help me design the red. It's tough, and I think I'm gonna have to hand design. I'm gonna have to digitize all of it to do when I
You're
want.
an artist. You're going to have to show it to send a picture when it's finished.
I will. But I'm craftsman. When I redid mine, it came up craftsman was my number one thing.
Probably be mine. I haven't done it yet.
It doesn't take long to do. I just go through and I don't think about the questions. I just do what pops in my head, Hospitality just didn't make it.
No.
what's an exhortation? That's what I get. The exhortation. What's
It's
that?
speaking.
Well,
Like
not only
preaching.
speaking, but building others up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Encouraging others.
that's encouraging others. That
Like
one.
being a counselor and stuff. All right, we have 2 more weeks and we have 2 more chapters. What, Barbara?
Do you think that God develops gifts throughout your lifetime?
Yes.
Because one of my weakest areas all my life is hospitality, and he's kind of thrown me into a situation now. I mean, yesterday I had like my 10 Bible study ladies here for lunch, and then we did Bible study, and then we hung out on the patio, and I look back and say, wow, God, that had to be you. That was not me. So I think maybe he develops too throughout our lifetime.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, you have different seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know that, when this year is going to be my last year of leading, and I know it's the end of this season, and he's already developing me in other areas where I'm going to be teaching other people how to do the sewing and embroidery and stuff. So, yeah. And he's just kind of thrown at my face and I'm going, I don't want to do that. And he goes, tough,
Yeah.
But, yeah, doesn't he, Barbara? He just tough. This is what you're doing now, But he puts the desire into you, I think.
Sometimes
Yes.
we're in a situation where we have to do something, and as we do it, the desire develops.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, Kathy. That's why I have you around to explain things like that.
I never wanted to be a teacher. My parents are teachers. Both my sisters were teachers. And from the time I was 4 or 5 years old, I would say, I will never be a teacher.
I said the same thing.
Never say never to God. Because I got in a situation where I had to do something. My children were being bused too far to school. So I thought, okay, I'll do this for 1 year. That was 42 years ago. And I'm still teaching.
She is. She's still homeschooling, and that's wonderful. And I love seeing people homeschool. If I had to do it over again, I would do it. If I knew now, then
Well,
what I know now,
exactly.
And I have more patience now. Then I did not have the patience. It was like, get them in school, get them out of my house. Tired of looking at them.
You'll learn patience because it's called the buck stops here. I can't blame the school. I can't blame their friends. The buck stops here.
Yeah.
That was quite a revelation.
The things we go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop recording and